yeah, we'll go over in a little box.
If you want to come for a girls' weekend, I'm serious. Like,
hey, I'm down.
I'll bunk with you.
Yeah.
Rob can sleep on the terrible mattress.
Be the big spoon?
Of course you can. I hate being the big spoon.
Okay, good.
As long as you don't mind me farting.
I'll fart back. It can be a war. see who's the stinkiest.
Okay.
Hello, Wanderers. I'm Jess.
And I'm Hannah.
And welcome to Wicked Wanderings. Hello, Hannah.
Hello, Jess.
How's it going?
Well, you know, do you really want... I mean, you are a therapist now, so if you really want to hear my problems...
I do charge $100 an hour.
Fuck that shit.
But
I'll talk to my dog.
I'll take spaghetti in payment instead.
We have spaghetti meatballs.
Perfect. It's my favorite meal because I'm a little kid.
Dino nuggets.
Yes. Also, guess what I learned today?
Please tell me.
So sorry, Wanderers, for the little bit of rambling, but I am starting my journey in the world of substance use and therapy.
Ooh.
And I learned today that cocaine is not a sedative. Cocaine is not a sedative, and it increases your dopamine by 350%.
No wonder people use it.
Yes. So... you guys are welcome for that knowledge.
Don't use drugs, but wow.
So it is definitely not a sedative. Anyways, let's get on to cocaine. Let's get back to Israel Keys. So I wish I could spend like a whole season on everything I do just because I want to add like every piece of information because I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
However, this is not that podcast. Maybe someday. But your prince will come.
Oh, I was going to say Over the Rainbow. That was the wrong song.
You had Disney vibes going. It's Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long week, people.
Get your songs right. So I listened to a podcast called True Crime Bullshit.
Ooh.
Which
that sounds fun.
Goes into a deep dive of Israel Keys. Like this guy who does it did the Freedom of Information requests, and he has a lot of the interviews. Mm-hmm. And it makes me so angry because I listened to him, not the podcast, but the interviews.
Interviews with Israel.
Okay. And he is just laughing like, oh yeah, this happened. He's psychotic. He's crazy. Oh my God. Yes. So
from his background though, this kid had no chance.
Yeah. He was pretty much born a douche canoe. I mean, that should have been his middle name on his birth certificate. Because I hate the nature versus nurture argument because it's not.
Really?
Yes, because it's not one or the other. It's both of them and then a hell of a lot more. There's so many things that go into what make a person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't believe it's just one thing. Absolutely not. Because if you have a family with mental health issues and you throw them into the best environment possible, like think about kiddos that are adopted, they still got those mental health issues that are in their DNA. You can't change that. Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. I thought you just didn't believe in it at all.
No, I hate the nature versus nurture. Like the verses.
Yes.
No.
Yep. No, it's not. It's a combination.
No time for that at the Wicked Wanderings podcast today.
No time for bullshit.
No time. So if you remember last week, we talked about the disappearance of Samantha Koenig and the eventual arrest of one Israel douche canoe Keys.
She was looking at you. I'm sorry.
Was she? Oh, Kenzie.
Where's Auntie Jess?
Come here.
Go get her.
They have the cutest dog, Wanderers. What is she? She
weighs
weighs
Yorkshire Terrier.
Like a little one.
She's little. She's only 4.2 pounds. She's not a teacup.
She's adorable, and I'm her favorite. Okay, I'm Auntie Jess now. Anyway, okay, moving on.
Sorry, Jess. Your niece was looking at you, so I had to say something.
She's adorable. So, Israel Douche Canoe Keys was arrested in Texas, some 4,000 miles away from where Samantha disappeared.
Right there, because he was on a cruise or some shit, right?
Well, he did, but this time he was in Texas for a family wedding.
Right.
Yes.
Right, okay.
And he was extradited back to Alaska to be interviewed by the FBI. And that took like 2 weeks for them to get him back. So in the meantime, they had a warrant to search his house, well, his girlfriend's house, his truck and yard, and they were able to take some computers that Keyes had access to, as well as other pieces of evidence.
It's not like TV where it happens all in 10 seconds.
No. I mean, we're still talking about true crime, right? Just kidding.
Wait, what?
You said taking 10 seconds.
Oh. Wow. Okay, I'm a little slow on the
A little bit. Moving on. So on Friday, March 30th, so keep in mind, this is a full month from the time of the ransom note, which was on February 24th, and a month from when he was arrested.
Okay.
So investigators got word that Keyes wanted to talk. He had 2 demands. At first, he wanted the death penalty off the table.
Of course he did.
And he wanted very little information given to the media. Reason because he wanted his daughter to have a chance at life and didn't want the information that he gave to get to her. So if Keyes didn't, what is crazy, and we'll talk more about this at the end, because I'm so flabbergasted, for a good word, about how things would have been different if Keyes didn't talk. So if Keyes didn't talk about Samantha, they didn't have a body. They didn't have any evidence, really, to connect him to her disappearance. They could only charge him with fraudulent ATM withdrawals and nothing more.
Wait, that's what the arrest was for?
Mm-hmm. Because, which would have only given him 6 months in prison. And if that, because he didn't have a criminal record. So who knows if he would have gotten probation. So having Keyes talk was very important. There was not enough evidence to take him to court over the disappearance of Samantha. Isn't that crazy?
You know, if Ted Bundy was one of his big wigs that he looked up to, Ted Bundy was the same way in a lot of ways because he loved talking.
Mm-hmm. They all do.
They love talking about what they do. Yeah, it's so
they get off on it.
They do. Mm-hmm. They do. Like, well, I know things you don't, and so they tell little tidbits here and there.
Yeah, just enough, and we'll see that with Keyes as well. It's like he'll give just enough, so he'll be like, I don't feel like talking anymore about it.
Yep. Yep. Ted Bundy would do the same thing. That's crazy.
So like I said, they didn't have any other evidence, so they needed Keyes to talk. They needed to find Samantha in order to charge him with her murder. So when they sat down for the first interview, Keyes stated that he was only talking to make things easier for himself and his family, and that down the line he would have more requests that he expected to be honored as well. They didn't waste any time asking Keyes where Samantha was. So Keyes told them to pull up Google Maps and zoom in on Matanuska Lake State Park and focus on the lake. He had been ice fishing on that lake in late February, and he had built an ice fishing shed. Once inside the shed, he said he had cut an 8x8 hole in the ice, covered it with plywood, and left. He had to make 3 trips because he couldn't park close to the lake, and he had to pull Samantha's body in the sled. He told investigators the first trip was the head, legs, and the arms. Keyes goes on to tell investigators the night he kidnapped Samantha, after driving around and prepping the shed at his house, he finally takes her into the shed around 2 a.m. He put a blindfold on her because he didn't want her to see where she was. When she was in the shed, he had her sit on a 5-gallon bucket, tied a rope around her neck, and screwed it to the wall. He said she was very cooperative, which I'm willing to bet that at that point, Samantha still believed that Keyes was telling her about the ransom and that he was going to let her go. This is when he asked her for her information so he could go get the license and her debit card from the house. So what we need to know about Keyes, just like most serial killers, is that he liked the control.
Oh, God, yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
He would only tell investigators what he wanted to, obviously, and the information that he knew they already had access to on the computer that they confiscated. Keyes would give them some information, then, like I said, he would say, I I don't think I'm going to talk about that anymore today. They asked what he did in the 2 hours from when he attempted the ATM and when he called for a cab for him and his daughter to go on their cruise. Keyes said he didn't feel like talking about it. But they asked him if Samantha was alive for the ransom note. Keyes replied, nope. They asked if she was alive when he came back from his cruise. Nope, he replied. And then admitted that he had killed Samantha before he left on the cruise and left her body in the shed while he was gone for 2 weeks.
Did he have a lawyer at this time?
He was appointed one, and it was a very good attorney, but he wanted to fire him, and he wasn't able to. Like, whatever laws are in place.
Dude, this is like Ted Bundy, because then I feel like I'm overlapping cases, but he said he liked Ted Bundy. So Ted Bundy was like, no, I've had this lawyer school and blah, blah, blah. Like, I know what I'm doing. I represent myself. So,
yeah. And we'll see later on why he didn't want this attorney. So they asked him what he did to Samantha during those 2 hours, and Keyes refused to tell them again and would only tell a certain agent, who happened to be a woman.
Of course.
They asked why, and Keyes replied, because that's the way I am. Whatever that means. What a fucking day.
Oh my God.
In the book American Predator by Maureen Callahan.
Which, by the way, do you recommend the book?
I recommend, yes. Okay. And I listened to the audiobook, and it's one of those where the narrator does all the voices. There's not a split, so she does the voice of Israel Keyes for the interviews. So if that doesn't bother you, the audiobook is good. But yeah, I would recommend this one. She states that this is where Keyes realized that he had control of the interview. And this is where Keyes starts with his demands again. He wanted them to quit searching his girlfriend's house and that they had to get his approval to search it. Pretty sure he has no legal claim to do that, but whatever. But it showed Keyes how desperate they were for information.
Yeah.
And this is probably why a lot of people haven't heard about Israel Keyes, because the FBI kept to their word for most of it, and they didn't release very much to the press during all this time. So he also didn't want them to interview his girlfriend anymore. He told them that she had no idea what was going on and that she wouldn't have anything to add. And Keyes told the investigators that no one really knew him and that he was two different people. And that the only person who knew everything was him, and they didn't need to talk to anybody else. So throughout the interviews, people, some witnesses called the tip line and were like, oh man, Keyes is amazing. I gave him the key to my house to do construction, and he was great. He was so nice. And then you have this douche canoe side of him that kidnaps and kills people.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we're starting to see a pattern here in the interviews. He gives them a bombshell of information, and he gives them just a little bit more information. And then when they ask for more, he was like, I don't want to talk about that part.
So right when they're hooked, he's like,
Yeah, he has them by a little, yeah. So he had full control. And it makes me wonder if he enjoyed seeing the investigators struggle when he refused to talk. When the interview started again, Keyes admitted that he had prepped the shed a few days earlier and put a plastic tarp on the floor so her DNA could not be found in the shed. He hadn't fully decided on where he wanted to take someone from. He was actually looking in another town, and he was looking specifically at the coffee kiosks because they had teenage girls, and they often were open late, and they were kind of secluded. But he saw Samantha at the coffee shop, and he liked the look of her. And so, that's who he kidnapped. So, like I said, he was going back to her house to get the debit card from the truck and her ID. And after checking the PIN to make sure it worked, he went back home, and she had asked him if he was able to get a hold of her dad. Keyes told her yes, and everything was fine. Then he knelt down in front of her and unscrewed her rope from the wall. He restrained her again, a little more securely, using rope instead of cable ties. Keyes told investigators that Samantha had known at that moment that she was not going to make it home. Keyes then sexually assaulted Samantha twice. When he was done, he stood above her as she tried to talk him out of killing her, and then he proceeded to strangle her. Keyes told investigators that he had also stabbed her below the shoulder blade, but not to quicken the death. And he would not go into more detail about the strangling or the stabbing of her because he didn't want to share that part.
What the fuck?
So this is an example of, yeah, I killed her and this is what I did, but I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty about it.
Wow.
So it kind of makes me wonder, did he want to keep it to himself? Was that his little moment that he had alone with Samantha? Did he not want to incriminate himself anymore? He was already telling them enough. I doubt he was feeling shame or nervous about it.
I feel like it's when these serial killers, these criminals, keep just a little bit of their victims. Mm-hmm. So you find that shoebox that's full of trinkets.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's jewelry. Sometimes it's a little bit of hair.
Mm-hmm. Panties.
Sometimes it's actually an ear or a finger.
Gross.
So I think that's just something that he was like, I really keep that as a trophy for myself.
Yeah, that's a possibility. He wrapped Samantha's body in a tarp and put her in the bottom cabinet in the shed. He went and took a shower and then woke up his daughter to leave for the cruise.
Oh my God, you went right, right for your daughter?
It was 20 degrees outside and he figured her body would be fine until he got back. And he didn't worry about getting caught because, well, there was no evidence, and the case would have gone cold by the time he got back. After posing Samantha and taking the ransom picture, like I went into more detail in the previous episode, Keyes put Samantha's body in a rolling tote and then cut her body into smaller, more manageable pieces. I struggle with how much detail to give to the Wanderers and to you, Hannah, because I want to be respectful of the victims.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their families. But I feel like some of this is needed to just see how fucked up this guy is.
It is a line, though, because I know in some of my episodes, like another one that we recorded tonight for later, where I was like, is this part really needed? And I decided at that moment that it wasn't, just because everyone has an imagination, but I agree. Like, there's some times where it's like, no, it needs to be told what happened to these people.
Yeah.
So that it keeps their memory alive.
Yes.
It is a fine line.
So he went on 3 different trips to the Matinuska Lake and disposed of her body piece by piece. It was less suspicious that way. On the first day, he went out 200 yards onto the ice and cut an 8x8 hole, like I mentioned, and built the shed. The second day, he took out a couple of parts of Samantha's body. He weighed them down with lead weights and dumped them into the hole. Keyes stated that dumping the body took about 5 to 10 minutes, and the rest of the body 2 more days to dispose of. He didn't want to look suspicious, so he took his time, and once he dumped the last of it, he decided to go fishing in the same hole. What a dick.
Oh my God, Wanderers, if you can see my face right now.
I was just thinking, I'm like, we really need to record.
We really should. What?
Yeah.
What?
No humanity in this man whatsoever.
I guess coming from like a religious standpoint, I like to think I have some type of faith. This is not the creation that God wanted. I just like...
flabbergasted,
is
right?
God just up there going like, what the fuck are you guys doing down there? Like,
I mean, everybody has their own agency, and that's...
Wait, what? Agency, what?
Maybe that's a Mormon thing.
What does that mean?
Make their own decisions, their own choices.
Oh, agencies.
Yeah. Mormons call it free agency.
Oh, we call it free will.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay. Free will, free agency.
Okay, agencies, like... I'm just like picturing like men at a desk and like different doors. Anyways, different podcast.
So the investigators went to Matinuska Lake, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and walked 50 feet to a fresh pile of snow. They kicked away some of the snow and found the hole. The FBI dive team was called out to search for Samantha's body, and they brought a 10-man team who were eager to find her. They asked for 4 tents, 2 for their monitors, 1 for the divers to change in, and 1 to hide what they recovered from the lake. It took nearly 2 hours to set up, and the investigators cut a hole into the 3-foot thick ice, and they sent a sonar head into the water. It wasn't long before it pinged on 5 distinct targets. They then set the ROV that would send visual images, and almost immediately, as it hit the bottom, 40 feet below, it showed one of the targets, a human foot. The remains weren't wrapped, they were naked and attached to lead weights, and they were able to confirm at that point that human remains were found. Next, it was the divers' turn. 2 men each took 15 minutes to make it down the 41 feet to the bottom of the lake. And that was, like, shallow for this lake. This lake could get up to 80 feet, I think.
I'm sorry, and this is in Alaska?
Yeah, this is in Alaska. So it was cold.
Yeah.
They were able to recover all 5 sections that Keyes had said he dropped down there. And they finally had Samantha.
Oh, my God.
But investigators weren't done with Keyes. And I guess Keyes wasn't really done with them either, because he told them that he had a lot more stories. However, Keyes told investigators that he would talk on his terms and that there were specific things that he wanted, and he won't talk until he knew those things were possible. Keyes wanted, which is different from what he initially told him, he wanted an execution date.
Wait, what?
Yeah. He did not want to stay in jail for years, having automatic appeals for a capital punishment. He wanted an execution date within a year. But because of the protections that are in place in the legal system,
right, you can't
it wasn't really
that.
responsible or possible. Yeah. So they said they would try, and he said that he wanted it done within a year, and if he was able to get that, he would tell them every single gory detail. Keyes said he wanted his daughter to have a place to grow up and not have all of this hanging over her head. And that wouldn't happen if he was still alive, going through appeals, being executed.
I don't get it.
I think somehow he has some sense of decency when it comes to his daughter, but not anybody else. The investigators told Keyes that in order for that to happen, he needed another body. So they told him that Samantha wasn't enough to get what he wanted. So Keyes sat for a minute and then agreed. He would actually give them 2 more bodies and a name. On June 8th, 2001, so keep in mind, currently it was 2012 when he kidnapped and murdered Samantha. So back in 2001, Keyes was visiting a family in Indiana and Maine. He had stopped to go fishing.
Wait, I'm sorry, you said Indiana and Maine?
Yeah, so he would fly in to Indiana and then drive up to Maine.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
A sincere expression of gratitude to our esteemed patrons, Lynn from Massachusetts, Heather from New Jersey, Courtney from Massachusetts, Amber from Idaho, and Chelsea from Utah, for their generous monthly contributions. Their support fuels the engine of our investigative endeavors here at Wicked Wanderings.
You too can become a valued patron and unlock a realm of exclusive content by supporting our mission for as little as $3 a month. Your contribution sustains our commitment to delivering high-quality content.
Visit wickedwanderingspodcast.com and click on the support tab to join the ranks of dedicated patrons like Lynn, Heather, Amber, Courtney, and Chelsea. Your investment not only keeps our podcast thriving, but also ensures you are at the forefront of intriguing discoveries.
Thank you for considering this opportunity to deepen your engagement with Wicked Wanderings. Your support is paramount in enabling us to continue our journey into the realms of mystery and true crime. And now, back to the shit show.
Why the hell would you drive that far?
So we'll get into that.
All right. Anywho, keep going.
He stopped to go fishing in Vermont, and while fishing, he got the itch again. He knew he had a kit buried nearby, and he could easily do it.
What? He had a kit buried in Vermont?
You see, Israel Keyes was meticulous when he committed his murders. This specific kit in Vermont was buried 2 years prior, just for a situation such as this.
Get the fuck out.
In fact, this wasn't the only murder kit Keyes had buried. He would never confess to how many murder kits were buried, but he said there were a lot and they were all over the United States. So, wanderers, if you ever find one of those orange 5-gallon buckets with weapons and Drano and rope and duct tape.
Drano?
Yeah, he would put Drano in them and possibly guns. That is one of Israel Keyes' murder kits that he's buried.
Please call the police.
Please call the police, yes.
Wow.
The same night, 49-year-old Army veteran Bill Currier and his wife Lorraine, 55, were asleep in their bed in Essex, a small town outside of Burlington, Vermont. They were awoken to a sound of a crash and were waking up. They're still kind of a little groggy when a man wearing a mask came into their bedroom. In Keyes' interview about the crime, he said it was a blitz attack and that he had to show who was in charge very quickly. He had tied them up with their hands behind their back with cable ties, and then he tied their hands to their feet together. Keyes said that when he was talking to them, asking questions, he asked if they had an alarm, if they had a safe, where the guns were, where the cash was, and where the ATM cards were. They tried to ask Keyes what he was trying to do, and he kept having to tell them to shut up and not talk to each other. While Keyes was robbing the couple, he would periodically go back and check on them in the room. They were trying to communicate with each other, and Lorraine had tried to roll over, and he became angry because he felt like they weren't taking the situation seriously. So he eventually went up to Lorraine, grabbed the back of her neck, shoved her head down into the pillow, and began to threaten her. And really, all of this only took about 15 minutes. He was only in the home for about 15 minutes.
What the fuck?
He forced the couple into their car and drove them to a second location, which was an abandoned farmhouse that Keyes had previously scoped out. The couple, which he mentions earlier about this, is that this abandoned farmhouse was like 200 yards from another house, or 100 yards from another house where a cop lived, because there was a cruiser in the driveway. Like, why would he pick this house?
He was testing his limits.
Yeah.
He was like, nope, I'm going to outsmart these bastards.
Mm-hmm. The couple became more difficult for Keyes after he got them in the car. They tried to talk to him while he drove them around, and Keyes found out that he and Bill had actually served in the same unit in the Army, the 25th Infantry. When he was looking through their stuff, he found like a little patch or something, and so he asked Bill about it. So they were both veterans.
Okay, I'm curious, like, as you know this, when people are like, oh, I was in the blah, blah, blah infantry, and like, oh, I was in the same, like, how does that work?
Well, I mean, with the Army, it's different. But, like, this is weird to me because there's an unspoken brotherhood and camaraderie for people who have been in the military, especially the same unit.
Okay.
And it's obvious that they were at different times.
Oh, so it could be the same unit number,
Yeah.
but different times?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. Because, you know, sometimes you see these shows and they bring that up and you're like, well, how did you not know each other? Mm-hmm. But if it was a different...
Yeah. It's like the 82nd Airborne. Tons of people. Not tons of people, but that's like the paratroopers. And
was that what you were in?
No.
Oh, okay.
Fuck no. Oh, I'm not that tough. That's like the paratroopers. No.
I think you're badass.
Thanks.
You're a badass bitch.
Fucking right. Anyway.
Okay.
Sorry. No. Far from. So the couple kept asking why he was doing it. He had told them the same thing that he had told Samantha, and that it was kidnapped for ransom. So he'd used the same ruse 11 years before. So when they got to the farmhouse, he thought that he had Lorraine secure in the front seat of the car, and he planned to leave her in the car while he took Bill downstairs into the basement. So there was a stool down there, and Keyes had used cables So Bill was kind of leaning over over the stool. So I'm imagining, this is what I imagine, the top of the stool was on Bill's stomach. So his hands were tied, but also his feet were tied to the stool. So, and this is one of the situations where Keyes laughs as he's retelling the story. Ew. But as he finished tying Bill up, he looked upstairs and Lorraine had gotten out of the car and was standing at the top. Lorraine took off running, and he eventually tackled her and brought her back into the house. He took her upstairs and tied her up with duct tape behind her back, and then tied her up with a rope so that she wasn't able to escape. So he tied her onto this mattress with ropes pulling her arms and her legs and around her neck so she couldn't move. And if she moved, it would tighten. So while he was doing this, he heard some noises downstairs, and he found Bill, who was also trying to get out of his cable ties. Bill was being difficult, which was pissing Keyes off. So he hit him with a shovel, but Bill kept fighting. So Keyes ran upstairs and got his Ruger 10-22 with a silencer and ran downstairs. He ended up shooting him and emptying his magazine into Bill. Aww. He waited until Bill wasn't going to get back up, and he didn't know if he was dead or not, but he went back upstairs and proceeded to sexually assault Lorraine twice. I'm seeing a theme here.
Oh, God. I am too, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And then he took her downstairs to the basement and strangled her, and he left their bodies there. And you want to know the shitty thing for Bill and Lorraine?
Wait, there's another shitty thing for Bill and Lorraine?
Yes, is that they were not his first choice of the night. Keyes was casing an apartment building, and he was waiting for the right person, and he had seen a man pull up and park. Keyes was walking up to the back of his car, and it was raining, and the man had gotten out of the car and ran into the apartment. Keyes said in his interview that if the man would have been 5 seconds slower, he would have been the victim that night, and not Bill and Lorraine. So Keyes picked locations, and the people were completely random. With this information, the FBI went to Vermont to find the old farmhouse that Keyes identified. But unfortunately, the house had been torn down and bulldozed over. The remnants of everything had been taken to the dump, and searches of the dump went on for weeks to no avail. Bill and Lorraine's bodies were never found.
Were they in the house?
They were in the house, but they tore the house down and everything was bulldozed.
You didn't check the house before you bulldozed it?
I mean, it had been a while, but there were some sources that said that whoever went to bulldoze the house, there was a horrible smell, but it was never mentioned that they saw bodies.
You would think they would check the house. Okay. Well,
yeah.
Whatever. Unbelievable.
So during their interviews with Keyes, he would ask if they found the bodies. And the investigators told him not yet, but they needed more time. And Keyes was getting frustrated. In all of his bargaining with the investigators, he was able to get internet access. And one time he met with the investigators, he asked the status of the search. And the investigators said that they still were. Well, Keyes said that, well, I saw online, and it looks like they called off the search because they were unable to find Bill and Lorraine. So Keyes responds with something along the lines of, well, I guess I mentioned them too soon. Like I mentioned earlier in the episode, Keyes was only willing to tell them information he knew they already had, and it was a matter of time. So now I'm not entirely sure what exactly was on the computer, but it was mentioned in one of the sources that Keyes had searched for the couple, and he had a tendency, like an addiction, to search for missing people. So if that's all that they had was an internet search for this couple on that computer, they still wouldn't have had enough to take Keyes to trial. So I'm not sure what they were going to find, but if he had not said anything, I'm wondering if they would have ever figured out what happened to the couriers. Most likely nothing. So Keyes kind of fucked himself when he told investigators about the couple. Because up until now, the FBI could control what was being let out to the media, and they could still bargain with Keyes. But now, the Vermont authorities knew about Keyes, and wanted to prosecute him, and it was something that the FBI could do nothing about. So after that, Keyes stopped talking for like a month and wouldn't talk to investigators. The interviews eventually continued, and we are able to see the escalation of crimes with Keyes, from animal cruelty to rape and sexual assault to murder. Keyes stated that he hadn't done anything drastic until he was out of the Army. Well, I'm pretty sure Keyes has a different idea of what is drastic from the rest of us.
Yeah. And that's a safe bet.
Yeah. In the summer of 97 or 98, Keyes sexually assaulted a teenage girl who had been tubing down the Deschutes River in Oregon. She was kind of falling behind her friends, and he admitted to stalking her from the tree line. He pulled her off the inner tube and took her into the outhouse, where he violently sexually assaulted her by knife point. Keyes said during the interview she wasn't as scared as he thought she'd be. Like she had had this happen before. She had kept talking to him and telling him that he was good looking and he didn't need to do this, and that she probably would have gone on a date with him. It was starting to rub him the wrong way, and he was originally planning on killing this girl as part of the satanic ritual, like we mentioned in the previous episode, but he said he was too timid and not violent enough to follow through with it and let her go. I call bullshit. But he vowed to never let that happen again. There were also rumors from his unit about some sexual assaults he committed while he was in Egypt, but nothing drastic until he came home.
I'm curious what the parameters are for,
right?
quote-unquote, drastic.
Yeah, what his definition of drastic is.
Yeah, because assault is assault.
Mm-hmm. So Keyes admits that his murders are sexually driven, something that he had in common with Bundy, which is probably why he idolized him. He was very meticulous and would go to extreme measures not to leave any evidence behind. He would wear gloves so there wouldn't be any fingerprints. He burned anything that did have evidence on him. He would wear different jackets. So he would carry a couple different jackets with him and then in case there were eyewitnesses so they'd get it mixed up.
I'm surprised he didn't have a bug.
Yeah, right.
Because Ted Bundy had a bug car.
Yeah. Even with his murder kits, he made sure the evidence in those kits would not be tied to him. And this is also why he didn't have a type. He admitted, like I said, to picking the location, but not the person. The person would be one of convenience in a place that he had already had it planned out. He said that it was easier to go for a random person because it was harder to connect to him. He would fly into one state, like Indiana or Illinois, drive to a family function 3 states away, and then kill somebody on the way. So there was really no paper trail, and he would have an alibi. He always went around family functions or other things. He went to crazy lengths to hide what he was doing, and he would even turn his cell phone off and take his battery out when he was killing, which is evidence in itself. Because behind the scenes, the FBI, who had records of his travel, such as plane tickets and car rentals, painstakingly compared his travel, his cell phone, kind of his MO, with people missing within the 400-mile radius of the areas he visited. One victim that was identified, the FBI believe is the work of Keyes, is Deborah Feldman. Deborah, 48, disappeared from her home in Hackensack, New Jersey on April 8, 2009. She was a troubled drug addict who may have been farming herself as a prostitute as well, which Keyes admitted to visiting prostitutes. There isn't much information about her disappearance, but after they compared her case with his travel plans, they decided to approach Keyes. So Deborah's wasn't the only case they approached him about this day. They had a few pictures of missing people that aligned with his travel. They showed Keyes the pictures, and the ones he didn't do, he'd say, nope, nope, nope. But then they came to Deborah's picture. He paused and said, I don't want to talk about her yet. Right?
Oh my God.
When Keyes talked about Bundy in his interviews, he said that Bundy had lost control towards the end. He became careless or overconfident, which seems to be the same thing that happened to Keyes. There was a lot he did differently when it came to Samantha Koenig that eventually led to his arrest. And we will never know for sure who his other victims are. On December 1st, 2012, 10 months to the day that Samantha Koenig died, Israel Keyes committed suicide in his prison cell with a razor blade and a noose sometime after 10 p.m.
Really?
Yep. He had left 12 drawings of skulls drawn with his own blood. The words, "We are one," written underneath one of them.
Skulls?
Skulls, yeah. I'll post it on Instagram. A picture of it. They have pictures of it.
So is he saying there was 12 victims?
Well, the FBI seems to think that there were 11 victims and the 12th skull was his.
I mean, he kind of was a victim in himself,
sense,
right?
Yeah. So some people think he killed way more than that.
Wow.
But now we will never know. And that is my summarized version of Major Douche Canoe Israel Keyes.
So he used the razor blade.
Mm-hmm.
He made those skull drawings, and then he had a noose.
Yeah. So, like I said, True Crime Bullshit podcast goes into a lot of like the specifics.
I gotta look this up.
So I also watched Dark Minds on the, I believe, ID, which I got some information of. The guy is a journalist and he's a little dramatic, but it was a good episode. However, I can't remember which one it was, but they said he had a rope around his neck and then kind of tied with his foot so he could keep the pressure around his neck, I guess. And then he slit his wrists.
Wow.
And there was one detective that was trying to get all, the guards to watch more on him and what he had access to. Like, Keyes wasn't supposed to have razor blades.
Right.
And somehow they kept giving him a razor blade. But a good thing that I can really appreciate from the True Crime Bullshit episode is he talks about the sources. And I see this a lot in the sources that I read for the episodes, because he says that if things are mentioned in one source and then it's mentioned in another source, then people tend to take that as fact mm-hmm. and then spread it. And that's kind of why what I try to do with my episodes is I take the information that I find that is similar in each source, and I don't mention what is different between the sources. And I think that's very true, because there was some information in one source about him having ties to someone that was indicted to the Oklahoma City bombing, or not indicted, implicated.
Yeah.
And then in another source, they hadn't met until after the Oklahoma City bombings happened. And then there was some mention of necrophilia in one source. And then the other one was like, there's nothing confirmed that he did that. And so it's tough to find, especially with social media nowadays, when information can get spread. So I hope I did justice for the victims, and I wish we could talk about more. And True Crime Bullshit actually goes into a lot of the potential victims that could be linked to him. And they researched his travel records with these people and if he really thinks that he was the one that's responsible. And a lot of them, Keyes was in the area like 2 or 3 days before these people went missing.
Yeah.
Highly suspicious.
And that's kind of why I do books. I'm not saying books can't be bullshit.
Yeah.
But I at least feel like there's some more, what is it they say, weights and levers? What is it they say?
I don't know.
Anyways, there's people looking at it, so I feel like at least there's that.
Editors.
Yeah. So, but I hear what you're saying.
Look at the book that you used for Maura Murray.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Because that was not a good book.
No. That was more about his own personal issues.
Yeah. Keyes was actually brought up in Maura Murray. Like, Maura Murray was actually brought up as one of Keyes' potential victims.
What?
But he was in California. at the time that she disappeared.
Girl, I was going
Right?
If that was the thing, I'm like, why'd you say it right now?
Because he was proven to be somewhere else.
I am so invested still in Maura Murray that I want to know what happened to her so bad.
I know.
If you don't know, it's our first episode, guys. Like, we invested.
In our own backyard, and there's so many mysteries to it. But yeah, so that's Israel Keys.
Well, thank you for, not talking about him because we don't care about him, but thank you for talking about
But
Samantha.
at the same time, he's so intriguing.
Yes.
Mental health wise.
Yes.
Like, yeah. I think in wise. Why does he do the things he does? Because he's a psychopath.
Why is he does this? Damn Putnams. Okay. Wow.
Damn Putnams. Also, like and subscribe everywhere. And please tell your friends to listen to some Wicked Wanderings.
I love all of you, but I want more of you.
We have goals. We want to grow.
We do. Come on. We're funny, people. We're funny.
Hilarious. We don't have to convince them. They know.
That's true. They do know.
Yes.
They do know.
But we have Instagram at Wicked Wanderings Podcast.
We will try to be better about posting because I feel like Jess is actually really good. I'm not. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm so bad, but Jess is very, very good.
I try. And then we have a Wicked Wanderings Facebook page. So like.
Yes.
And then
email.
Join, follow.
We have an Instagram, a Twitter /X.
No
we have
one's
a
on that.
Threads.
We do have a Threads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a website.
Yes, wickedwanderingspodcast.com. So thank you for listening.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks,
Come again.
guys.
Thanks
And
for
don't be a
listening.
douche canoe.
The show wouldn't be possible without our amazing producer and editor, Rob Fitzpatrick, who works tirelessly behind the scenes to bring you the best content.
And a special thanks to Taiga Soundprod for providing the captivating intro music, Cinematic Intro 24.
And of course, we can't forget the hauntingly beautiful outro music, Rhino's Theme, composed by Kevin MacLeod.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platforms, like Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Your feedback means the world to us.
Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram for behind-the-scenes glimpses, updates, and more thrilling content. You can find us at Wicked Wanderings Podcast.
Thank you so much for listening and being part of our Wicked Wanderings community. We appreciate each and every one of you.
Stay curious,
Keep exploring.
and always remember to keep on wandering.